Net gain, networking, encouragement, and training. Brought to you by Jack of All People Trades, helping snow and landscape companies recruit, train, and retain the best employees. Welcome to Net Gain. This is Networking Encouragement Training. I'm your host, Evan Tashwire from Jack of All People Trades. We help landscape, snow, and service businesses stop losing good employees and build win-win workplaces without all the corporate HR fluff. Net gains for landscape, snow, and service business owners who are tired of hiring, training, and then losing good people. Each episode tackles real people problems and gets into what actually works in the field. So this episode is going to be the conclusion of the 4-part employee engagement basics that I've been doing. So some of you might be saying, what is employee engagement? We're going to start with that. So for y'all who've tuned into the prior episodes, you've heard this, but I think this will even help you put you in the right mindset. So just to get started, I want you to, before we get into what is employee engagement, what you can do, I want you as a business owner or leader to think about this. What would your business look like with 21 to 51% less employee turnover? Just think about what you could get done. Think about the lack of headaches from rehiring, retraining, losing people that knew what was going on. What would it look like with 78% less absenteeism? So out of, all the times you've had call offs and no shows, what if 3 out of 4 of those didn't happen? What if you had 23% greater profitability? How could you grow as a company? All these things are possible and have actually been shown, according to research, to be possible through employee engagement. And just so you know, these aren't random numbers that I just made up. This comes from decades of Gallup research, as the difference between top quartile or top fourth and bottom quartile, bottom fourth business units from Gallup's Q12 survey over decades of research. So if you want employees to stay with you, they need to see a future with you and they need to be engaged. And this is how you do it. So the too long didn't read, if none of those stats or things matter to you, is this stuff works. So pay attention, put it in place, and do something with it. I've seen it work myself too. So this is not just a speaking from research. This is also speaking from experience. But to get started, we're going to first define what employee engagement is. So again, review for those of y'all who've been tuned in, but if you haven't tuned in, this will give you a foundation. So employee engagement is the emotional connection and commitment that employee has to their organization, their work, and their colleagues. It's not just about whether they show up for work, but it's how they show up. Do they feel involved and responsible and accountable, or are they just going through the motions and not really caring? So engaged employees are people who are psychologically invested in their work. So think people that are learning, growing, really wanting to do a good job and showing that. They feel a sense of ownership over their contributions. So they go that extra mile. They understand what the mission is and make sure it gets done. And they're motivated to go above and beyond. So in snowstorm, think of the people that are the nobody's above shoveling, no matter what. If I'm on the site and an area needs clear, I jump on a machine, I pick up a shovel, I brush off some steps because that's what needs done. Those are the type of people that are engaged. So long story short, engagement is not really as much a mental or thought through need. It's really an emotional internal drive. So with this episode today, we're going to be talking about growth. And like I said earlier, if employees are going to stay with your company, they need to see a future with you and you need to provide that. So that's going to be what I'm going to talk about today. So as always, what I challenge you with listening to Net Gain as a trainer is think about off what you're learning today. What is one thing you're either going to start, stop, or continue doing based on what you're learning? So what employees need as a team in order to grow is Gallup has identified 2 statements that really show if employees are engaged when it comes to growth. And number one is in the last 6 months, someone at work has talked to me about my progress. So people want to know how they're progressing. They want those formal check in points to know, are they meeting goals? Are they behind on goals? I personally, from a performance review side, suggest having your annual review, which is, your formal annual performance review, but you also should be having quarterly check-ins on your goals to see if you're behind, ahead. You can also talk about career development at this point, but, I would say quarterly reviews are good, but they're the minimum. So you really want to be having those weekly or bi-weekly one-on-ones where you're checking in, because I always say when you get to a performance review, there never should be a surprise if you're doing well or not. You should have been hearing feedback along the way. So you really should be talking about progress, with your employees every time you meet, especially when you're meeting one-on-one. That feedback needs to be consistent, and even in the moment in the field too. So you do need to think about having a career ladder or lattice option or places for employees to make progress. So what I mean by that is ladder is obviously steps upward. You go from seasonal shoveler to shovel crew leader to equipment operator to maybe full-time crew member, full-time foreman, crew supervisor, full-time operations manager. But also think about things like a career lattice. So what a lattice is, you think about a lattice in landscape design. You can kind of go sideways on a lattice. It's all interconnected. You don't have to go straight up. So maybe you are that crew member and maybe you decide you want to go, learn irrigation and take, some courses or certification on that and move over to irrigation. Or maybe you decide, hey, I want to, the business has a construction side. I want to learn some skills there. I want to go, get education in carpentry and move over to that side and do some carpentry labor as opposed to landscape labor. There's different ways you can move sideways too. And always as a company, as you're growing, think about what you need. And another way you can use the lattice metaphor is you can actually build different responsibilities into jobs and evolve people's jobs. So maybe they started out, I'll use myself as an example. I started in a snow company as a recruiter. I was responsible for recruiting full time and seasonal staff. But as I was there and I talked to my boss, I said that I was interested in, training and development. Could I do some things like lunch and learns? Could I implement individual development plans? Could I do some leadership training? So that got added into my description, and I was actually promoted to then talent acquisition and development specialist. So I still did the recruiting, but I also was able to do the talent development training. Eventually, even picked up some project management and self perform. So look for ways for your high potential and high performers to transform and add to their roles. So another thing you need to think about is people are going to want to make different types of progress at work. So you're going to have what we call steady eddies, steady eddies. These are people that just want to grow and thrive in their role. We had somebody I worked with. She was a part of our admin team, was also a real estate agent. Just loved her role, loved what she did, and loved having the flexibility to do it and pursue her other interests. She wasn't interested in being a leader, being a C-suite type person. She wanted to be where she was. That's okay. For those people, make sure they have the materials and equipment to do the job. They know what's expected, and see if there's ways you can help them develop their skills or work more efficiently or thrive within their job. But you don't want to pressure those type of people to grow. You just want to see what they need to do the job and continue to thrive in the role that they love. But there are going to be some people, on the other hand, who are going to be people that really want to grow. And with them, you're going to definitely want to, you know, kind of help them grow in that aspect. So think about, your steady eddies, but also think about those people that want to grow and thrive, become, part of leadership. If you're growing and you're needing leaders, I would definitely suggest a career path, career plan for leadership development, whether that's seasonal to full time or within your full time staff. I definitely, as a takeaway for any snow companies, especially if you self perform pretty heavily, I would say you definitely need to have career paths for your seasonal people, even if it's just seasonal sidewalk crew to heavy equipment operator or crew leader, where you provide them some training that they can make those moves, or maybe heavy equipment operator to site lead or to, sub account manager, regional site leader. So that can be something seasonally that you set up training to do to get them to that next level. And that's something I can definitely help you with on the nuts and bolts if you're looking to put that into place. But bottom line, employees need to have talk about their progress. So if you don't have performance reviews in already, definitely put that in. If you don't have quarterly performance conversations, I suggest those as the minimum. But if you're not talking consistent progress and development at one on ones, that's something as a leader for you to think about really growing into. And then the second thing that Gallup really uses to measure engagement from a growth perspective is in this last year, I've had opportunities to learn and grow. Bottom line, if people don't see a chance to grow, that's going to take away their hope and that's going to lead to turnover. No growth equals no hope, leads to turnover. It's math. It's Evan math, but it's math and it works. Um, growth can take many shapes. So just like I talked about with career development, growth doesn't always have to be preparing for a promotion or preparing to be a leader. You as a small company you might only have a couple spots for leaders, or maybe one right now and you're just hiring crew members, or maybe it's you and a couple crew leads that are very solid and you don't have opportunities. But what I suggest for you is use the opportunities to grow people where they can. You can always teach new skills. You can always give stretch assignments, ways for job shadowing. So it can take many different shapes. And here's the thing, some of you might be saying, well, what if I train them? I don't have a spot for them and they leave. I still say that's better than what if you don't train them and they stay and they're average to sub average. You're much better to train them not have the spot for them and they leave. Because here's the thing, if you have it, think about it this way, if you've built a training program that you can train somebody to be ready for the next level, if you've done it for one person, you can do it for somebody else as well, and that becomes a renewable scalable system for you. And I also look at it this way, I think we in industry kind of sell ourselves short in this. I get we obviously want to reduce turnover and not have turnover, but if you think about it, I'm a big football fan. So if anybody else is a football fan, I think you'll get this metaphor. Is when you have a head coach of an NFL or college team, and they have their offensive and defensive coordinator, maybe assistant head coach. One of them gets a head coaching job with another team. One of them gets the defensive coordinator gets a head coaching job with another team. Now that coach has what's called a coaching tree. They have assistants under them that have become head coaches, and that's celebrated. So I say, why is that not celebrated in our industry? If you're somebody that, you've built up operations leaders and they've gone out and become directors other places or sales directors other places, ideally, yes, you keep them with you. And if here's the thing, if you have a great culture, there's always great chance for you to retain. But if somebody just gets a great opportunity and you've trained them and done everything else right, then that's a branch on your coaching tree. And I'm not saying that should be the primary focus, but I'm saying that to kind of reroute your expectations a little bit into, hey, if I've developed somebody and built a great engaging culture, you've done everything you can. I always say control the controllables. You can't control everything, but you can control what you do. So, what I say is with training and opportunities to grow, definitely have training that's practical, hands on, make it engaging, have ways to apply it on the job. That's why I try to use examples here that you can do on the job, because adults learn best when they're able to apply what they learned in small bites on the job. So, that's what I want to provide you from a net gain perspective. A big way to do this, shadowing opportunities are huge. So you can do things like also bring in trainers, send employees to conferences like SIMA, Snow Alliance, the NALP, Storm Field Day, and really help them grow. So one pro tip I say with like conferences and trainings and stuff is ask your employees that you send, have them bring back a takeaway that they learned, something they took away from the conference, they're going to apply at work, and make it part of your discussion. So talk about, like, let's say you send a group of 6 people to the SIMA symposium. Bring them back and let them at the next huddle either all 6 share, or maybe a couple share at one, a couple people share. If you have daily huddles, maybe one person shares every day, 2 on one day, whatever. But let them share what they learned, how they're going to apply it, because being able to share and teach others actually helps them retain it and get more engaged with it. And this is an area I've seen companies fall short in. Is you go to SIMA, you network. Don't get me wrong, networking is insanely valuable and you should network. But I see people, sit through class and maybe say, oh, I knew that already, or I didn't get anything out of it, as opposed to not trying to take one thing away that you'll apply at work. So I encourage you and challenge you as we get into, conference season. This will be coming out here in the, late winter, early spring. I challenge you to really go that extra mile with, getting engaged in learning at conferences. So, your next steps with employee engagement, I always suggest measure it, whether it's through the Gallup Q12, which I highly suggest, or another tool. And then also create a playbook that you can put follow up action into place based on your scores. So if you're doing well, how do we keep doing well? If you're not, what do I need to change? And I can help you create and put that playbook into place. I've done it with several organizations and seen boosted engagement. And why this is important is because this gives you feedback, and getting and acting on feedback is like playing the game with a cheat code. So if you're ready to play the game with a cheat code, let's talk. This has been Net Gain with Evan Tashwire from Jack of All People Trades. So if you like what you're hearing here, definitely subscribe wherever you listen. Leave us that 5-star review with comments. And if you think this can help somebody, whether in your company or somewhere else, share it with them. And finally, if you need help hiring, training, and retaining your best people, reach out to me. Let's talk. This has been Net Gain, Evan Tashwire, signing off.
Weather, but you ain't gon' slip and fall with that. Why? Cause we snow fighters, we assaulting that. Get it, salting that. King need this salting rap. Clown brokers, end of the road. This a cul-de-sac. Blackout with white glove service. That's the coldest facts. Sparks flying from the start. It's a Goldberg match. Wild with the snow clouds running. We be on a mission. How we put the blade